Howdy, Eric Barseski, Director of Instructor Development for 5 Simple Keys, and one of the two owners of thesametrap.com. We've been discussing grip strength a little bit, and I've been wanting to make this video for a little while now on how grip strength can actually kind of have the opposite effect of what you'd expect. I will agree that drawers of the golf ball tend to have stronger grips, and faders tend to have weaker grips. But the reasons why that's true are almost backwards, and it kind of goes to the ball fight law stuff and whatnot, but it's also smart. We know that faders of the golf ball, who tend to have weaker grips, I will agree with that, need to start the ball to the left of the target line so the ball can curve back to the right. So we'll say this ball needs to start to the left of the target line so it can fade back to the right. Drawers of the golf ball with strong grips, which I also agree with, need to start the ball to the right of the target line so it can draw back. But now these face angles seem contradictory to weak and strong grips, right? I have a left pointing face on the left side with the weak grip and a right pointing face with a strong grip on the right. It turns out though that weak and strong grips are complementary to these alignments because they complement the changes that seem to almost naturally happen in most people. I'm not going to say 99% of people or whatnot, but more than 50% of people, because of their sense of what needs to happen. If I'm going to have a left pointing face on the left, the last thing I want to do is swing out to the right. That's going to produce a massive hook. And if I have a right pointing face over here, the last thing I want to do is swing to the left, because now I've got a push slice. So I'm going to show you these two swings real quickly. Fade is on the left, draw is on the right. They're not exactly synced up, but I'll stop at a few points here. Right? These are exaggerated. We'll come back to these. On the left I should swing. Here we go. Okay. So that gives us a general idea of what I want to demonstrate in this part. Let me get this to the draw. Okay. Now I have video showing the club face itself. On the left, again, a very weak grip. What you'll notice, if I do nothing, if I make no compensations and just kind of swing on a plane, air quotes for plane, if I make no compensations, I would tend to return the club face pointing well to the right as someone who took a very, very weak grip. So instead of wanting to swing that way, because that's a ball that pushes like crazy and then slices because it's pointing so far to the right, instead I'm going to want to do this. I'm going to want to return the club head a little bit more on this path into the golf ball. Right? You can see now that the face is pointing somewhere in here, and the last path that I had is pointing somewhere there. We know from the ball flight laws that this would be a nice pull fade. Perfectly playable, good shot. On the right now, I have a very, very, very strong grip, and if I do nothing to compensate for that, kind of swing again on the plane in the air quotes, I'm going to have a face that's pointing well to the left. If I am swinging kind of straight into the golf ball, that ball is going to start left and hook like crazy. Not a playable shot, just like the push slice is not a playable shot on the left. I make one more non-compensation swing. Okay, so here's a swing now. This is the compensation that I would tend to make as a better player, or as anyone who's hit enough golf balls to know. Right? Now my swing is going to want to come very much this way, right? So now I have a club face pointing here and a path pointing here. Again, a playable shot, a push that draws, right? These are the compensations that we'll tend to make because we don't want to hit a massive pull hook or a massive push slice. So again, we'll look at this video and see how we do those things, how we make those compensations. First off, it tends to start at setup. And it's no coincidence that I've stopped these at setup. Here you can see my left arm under my right, and my shoulders and my hips tend to be a little more left pointing. Here you can see my left arm over my right. My hips tend to be a little more closed, and my shoulders are definitely more closed, simply because of how my hands are sitting on the club. In this one, my right hand is more under, with my left hand more on top, and here the opposite. My left hand is under with my right on top. So I get a higher right shoulder, higher left shoulder, etc. This, if nothing else, will tend to produce a path that's slightly to the right and slightly to the left. Now, the key part is, you can see at the top of the backswing, I've got a flat left wrist on the left with a weak grip, and here I have a slightly cupped wrist. If I flatten that wrist out, I might have a club face like that. If I cup this wrist, I might have a club face like this. So I am trying to hit the ball reasonably straight. I did air quotes for that also. I gotta stop doing that since you can't see it. In both those cases. As we saw in the previous video, where it was a close-up on the club head, on the left I will tend to return this with a club face pointing way over here, and on this one I will tend to return the club face pointing well to the left, unless I compensate somehow. The way most golfers will compensate is with, if you're familiar with the golfing machine, third accumulator stuff, but basically how we roll the left arm. How we roll our hands, how we roll our forearms, how we roll our arms over each other, etc. That will play a key role in affecting the club face position, and correspondingly will also alter the club's path. So on the left, with the super weak grip that I need to get back to somewhat square to the target, I'm going to tend to roll this left arm over itself or in this direction, or unload the third accumulator. This will tend to steepen the shaft. It will tend to keep the right elbow back. It will tend to send the club out because it's rolling those arms over each other. You can see the right elbow stays high. It will tend to help me square the club up, and it will tend to produce impact somewhat like this. Again, the club face is pointing here, but the path is going to be to there. So a playable shot. On the right, I'll tend to not load that accumulator, or even possibly load it more. I will not unload it. I may load it some more, or at least keep it loaded. It will tend to shallow the shaft. It will tend to drive the right elbow down, and it will tend to help me keep the club face as open as possible. And when I swing down, we'll tend to produce a face that's pointing there with a path that's pointing over there, a push draw. Look at the differences in these two pictures. They somewhat mirror setup in that my shoulders are more open over on the left, they're more closed on the right. You can see my left arm underneath my right arm on the left and above my right arm on the right. So the takeaway from all of this is this. A strong grip will often tend to produce a club face that points farther to the right at impact, while a weak grip often tends to produce a club face that points to the left more at impact. Kind of the opposite of what you'd think. Most people think weaker grip, ball fades, stronger grip ball draws. That's true, but generally speaking, it's true. But remember, fades start to the left and draws start to the right. So because of the compensations, because we don't want to return a club face that's pointing to the left with a path that's square or out, because that would produce a terrible duck hook. Because we don't want to produce a face that's pointing to the right with a path that's square or to the left, because that would produce a massive push slice. Face and path almost tend to move along with each other, and a stronger grip tends to move the path to the right and keep the face to the right, while a weaker grip tends to move the path to the left and keep the face a little to the left. Kind of the opposite of what you'd think, right? Because of what we do to the path and its effect on the face. If we have a weak grip, we tend to, during our swing, do things to help, quote-unquote, square up that club face, which we often overdo slightly to get it left pointing. And if we have a strong grip, we often do things to, quote-unquote, hold off the face a little bit. So we actually tend to produce a face that points a little to the right, with the path also shifting to the right. So I hope that clears things up. Sometimes, we see advice from people saying, oh, I'm starting the ball to the right, I should strengthen my grip. Well, that could actually produce shots that start farther to the right. So, or vice versa. I'm starting the ball to the left. Oh, well, you should weaken your grip. Well, oftentimes, strengthening your grip will tend to move the shots or the club face farther to the right. So it's backwards from what a lot of people think when they're looking to fix and diagnose some people's flaws. Not in everybody. It's not a 100% situation. I'm not going to put a number on it, although I will say, in my experience, it is more than 50%. It's the majority of the time. And that's all I'll say about how often it tends to matter. So I hope this helps, and I look forward to discussing it more in the thread. Thank you very much.